So, yes, this is a little bit about it. And just talk about my colleague here, Toby. Toby has worked with various organizations and he has helped various consultants as well, not only individuals, but also the strategic leadership team in the organizations. And he has tons of rich knowledge working in the field of. He also went and investigated what is neuro-linguistic programming, and he's brought in some of those concepts, and he's been helping teams and organizations. Not only that, there's an element of cognitive behavior therapy, life coaching, and he brings in all the different learnings from various elements and puts it in front of people as well as organizations and asking them, what would help look like for you? And how can we make success? What can we use some of these tools to deliver value? So that's a little bit about Toby. If I want to speak about this gentleman, I can go on volumes, but I'll shut up and I will hand over the reins to my colleague here, Toby.
Thank you, Krishna. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, everyone, and thank you for joining. So, the purpose or the more main goal for today is really to understand coaching at a more deeper level. And more importantly, you can find a lot of information on coaching if you go to YouTube, read books. Uh, what I have brought for you today is some practical experiences that have shaped how I coach, things that I've learned by doing it. And that's something that you don't find in books, that you don't find in YouTube. So this is slightly unique because I'm going to bring a lot of personal stories and things that have worked for me. So hopefully you're going to get a lot out of this today. So I'm going to keep it light. I would like to keep it engaging. If you have any questions, please put it on the chat window. Um, Chitra is going to be handling that along with Krishna. So let's go ahead and get into it. So what is coaching? Since you all signed up for this course or this session, I'm interested to understand, what is your definition of coaching? If you could please type in your chat, what is your understanding of the word coaching? I'm full volume here, so I don't know if there is a challenge with the sound. Neha says coaching is mentoring. Jason says helping lead people to a good decision. Good one. Okay. So here's the ICF definition: helping others grow to fulfill. Okay, understanding clients' problem, coaching them, mentoring, training, asking great questions. Okay, bringing out the best in others. Excellent. Yeah, being a catalyst. Find ways to accompany a coach into becoming the best version of themselves. Excellent. Yeah. So we are off to a great start because I think you have good foundational knowledge of what coaching is. But let's start with something that can baseline us. Sorry, my mouse is hyperactive today. It advances. So here's what ICF is the International Coaching Federation, which is considered the gold standard in coaching. Uh, so professional coaches, they go through their learning process and they get certified by this body, which is ICF, International Coaching Federation. If you've never come across them, I would highly encourage you to look it up. We're going to share a few things from them today, but their definition here, and I'm sorry, I typically don't like to read out, but since this is a quote, I'm just going to read it out. So it is a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. The process of coaching often unlocks previously untapped sources of imagination, productivity, and leadership. So what it really means is that it is a conversation during which the coach asks thought-provoking, open-ended questions that really go deep within the coachee or the client's inside, and they come up with those answers. So coaching is different from mentoring. Somebody mentioned mentoring. Mentoring is different than coaching because mentoring assumes that the person has a lot of expertise, has a lot of knowledge in a certain area, and is guiding the person, often telling them what to do or giving them suggestions. Whereas coaching is where you're not giving them suggestions, you're not telling them what to do. You're asking them questions so they use their own internal resources. They bring out what is inside them to solve the problem themselves. So that is a quick definition of coaching, and this is from ICF. So let's move forward into understanding how does this feel, the whole thing about coaching, how does that fit in with in the agile realm? I think it's important to understand that. So this is a rendition of the famous coaching competency model that was created by Lisa Atkins. Lisa Atkins um, was a project manager. She was working as a BA, and then she went to ICF and she got certified way back. And then she brought a lot of this wealth of knowledge and information of how professional coaching is done. She brought it into the realm of agility. And she wrote a famous book, which is Coaching Agile Teams, which is the foundation for pretty much all agile coaches. So this is a creative rendition of her competency model. And I'm not going to go too deep into that because that's not really the focus of today. But what she basically says that, there are different areas where an agile coach needs to have good experience and strong skills. So it's mentoring, coaching, teaching, facilitating, all those four are different. In addition to that, you should have, subject matter expertise, which is in the bottom where my mouse is. So, you should understand about the domain that you're working in. For example, if you're working in banking, you should know about the different financial models and stuff like that. They should have technical mastery. They should, have a good understanding of what kind of architecture is being used. Is there DevOps? Is there automation? How does that work? How does that fit in? And also understand how does transformation work? How do they move from waterfall to agile? And within agile, if they're changing from say Kanban to Scrum, that those transitions, how to do that. And on top, you have here is expertise in the area of agile and lean, understanding the mindsets and behaviors, and how to influence people. Now, if you can see here, coaching is what she's written is inspires potential, right? It is not mentoring. Mentoring is where you're fostering growth through a partnership, through telling them what to do. So it fits in well with into the agile realm. But if you are in agile and you're a coach, you're not into that coaching stance all the time, right? 8 hours per day, you cannot be in a coaching stance. You're using all the other skills and you're bringing your whole self when you're acting or working as or leading as an agile coach. So hope that makes sense. So this is a tool that needs to be in your toolkit, and it's important to understand how to do that. And in those instances when you have to do coaching, this is where today's session fits in. How are we going to do that? With that, I had talked about ICF. So let's understand some of the competencies that are related to professional coaching. So ICF has very stringent standards, and every few years they update their coaching competencies. So here are the 8 coaching competencies on which they so when somebody applies to get certified by them, they assess that person based on these 8 areas. So please take a quick look at it. If you want to take a quick screenshot, you're welcome to. We will be sharing slides afterwards. But yeah, these are the 8 areas, and they pay particularly a lot of attention to ethical practice, right? Which basically means that you're maintaining confidentiality. You're not doing something illegal. You're not being disrespectful in a bad way. Your presence throughout the coaching, you have to make sure that you are present for for your coachee, which means that you're paying full attention. You're not looking at your iPhone or doing other things on the side. Active listening is extremely important, and different levels of listening. Those of you who have gone through the ATF course that is taught by Leadership Tribe, you will understand the different levels of listening that is required. And then evokes your awareness. So I'm not going to go into each one of them. This is a session by itself, but it's very, very important to understand these. Although you may not be going for this certification, it's important to know that when you are doing coaching, these are a few things to keep in mind. With that, let's jump into the main topic area for today, which is, let's just play through a scenario, right? So let's say that Krishna is my client, and I have had conversations with Krishna, and Krishna wants, a coaching session. So typically what happens before that is, right, we may have had a discovery call in which Krishna, finds me on LinkedIn, or somebody recommends me to Krishna. Krishna does some research, and then maybe pre-selects 2 or 3 people, and then interviews those 2 or 3 people, or has conversations with them to decide who to go with. And so that's when the discovery would happen. And I would tell Krishna, hey, here's what I do, here's how I do, here's what experience I have, and maybe share some of my qualifications. And if Krishna likes that, he'll move forward with. So in the next stage, basically, I will have a conversation with Krishna and say, here's how this works. Whatever the contract is, I'm going to share a contract with him. I'm going to share the financial, how much it costs, how many sessions, etc. So we'll get some of those technical and boring things out of the way. But Krishna basically signs a contract, and I sign that contract saying that I am, as a coach, here are my responsibilities. Krishna will sign as a coachee what is his responsibilities. And once that is over, whatever date we decided, uh, Krishna and I are going to have a conversation. So this is kind of the prelude to that, because I might be talking about a few of those pre-steps during the next few slides. So now the thing is, this is all done, and let's say I'm going to talk to Krishna on Monday. So there are a few things that I should do to be prepared as a professional coach, so that my personal brand, as well as my coaching style, as well as the objectives that Krishna has, I want to achieve Krishna's objectives, right? And also want to achieve my objectives, which is to be an awesome coach and really help Krishna reach his goals and achieve what he's looking for. So that is job satisfaction for me. So how do I prepare? So the next few slides are for that. So this is material that you don't typically find in other places. So let's jump into it. Once again, my mouse is kind of fiddly today. It jumps 2 slides, but if it does, I'll bring it back. Okay, so preparation is key here. So one of the first things you should do is, especially now during COVID, most of us are not going to the office yet to work. So wherever you're going to be doing your presentation from, because it's going to be through Zoom or Teams or whatever format of whatever collaborative tool you're choosing to use, um, make sure that there is good lighting there. You appear well. It's not like dark. Make sure that your background is clean and professional, right? It's not like kids running around, dogs running around. Any kind of clutter that you may have in your workspace, you may want to remove that. There are tons of creative backdrops that you can use. What you see behind me is fake, it's not real. But there are so many ones that you can use. I like Krishna's, which is very clean. It was black, so all the focus is on Krishna. I want to look scholarly, so I put some books behind me. But you can do whatever you want, but make sure it's professional. The next thing that you want to do is, inform your family. Put your phone on silent mode. If you have pets, make sure you secure them. Last thing you want is, the cat appearing on the slide while you're talking, right? So you want to be careful with that. Next is technology. This is important. So many times this happens. Um, Make sure that you have, if you have had internet problems, and if you have, four people in the family and everybody's on a phone and everybody's on their laptop and you have low bandwidth, please talk to your family members or whatever you need to do to make sure that you have enough bandwidth for your voice to go clearly, for your image to go clearly, and for you to be able to participate fully. So be careful and just check everything in advance. It's a good idea to test your mic and Zoom in advance as well, or whatever tool you're using. Make sure you're audible. If there is disturbance in that area, it's a good idea to wear some sort of headset or headphones, um, especially if they're noise canceling, even better. But if not, just be in a quiet area. And last but not least is appearance. You don't need to wear a suit and a tie, or uh, you know but just be presentable, and you look professional, and that's all you need to do. So this is preparation that you need to do in advance. And I've seen, it sounds very basic, that you would think that people know about it, but a lot of times we skip this, and during that there is telephone problems, or somebody calls, or the mom comes from behind asking, hey, what time are you going to come up for dinner? You want to avoid those things. With that, let's jump forward to some best practices. Um, I'm not going to read each one of them, but it's a good idea to always start with the contract. Just remind them of the contract, tell them, hey, you signed it. A lot of times, your coachee or your client may not remember about that, but I think it's important to just briefly mention that, so that they're aware that this is a coaching session, this is not a mentoring session, that you will not be giving them advice. Also remind them that you're going to be practicing ethical standards, which means that it's going to be confidential. It also creates a good psychological safety for that person. Also remind them that you might be taking some notes, and those notes are just so that you can serve them well. So that's important to do. It's very important to create rapport right from the beginning. So don't jump into coaching. A little bit of chit chatting is like, hey, how are you doing today? General things, right? Talk about the weather, whatever you need to talk about, general things which are happening. And so the whole idea is to create rapport, make that person feel comfortable. And then, you have to be present. You have to be very present. You're listening, you're looking at the person's body language. Obviously, you want the video to be on for the other person as well. And then, there are so many other things that you need to do. Like I said, I'm not going to read all of them, but pay attention, in active listening mode. You're writing down any things that you need to, maybe refer to during the conversation. Um, Listening is so important. And then, responding thoughtfully. If you don't have anything intelligent to say, just saying ha in between is okay, so that if they are going long in the conversation, it's just good for them to know that you are listening. And since I'm talking about listening, sometimes it's also a good idea to use good mirroring techniques, right? So just to make sure that you're telling the person, I heard you say X. Don't say I understood X. Say I heard you say X. Can you go a little deeper into that? A lot of times when the coachee or the client says something, a lot of times those thoughts have just formed in their head, and they are probably listening to it for the first time. And a lot of times a light bulb goes in their head and says, oh, damn, I never thought about that. And that's the first time they've actually said it. So when you repeat it back to them, they get to experience that once more. And they're like, oh my God, I never thought of that. That makes a lot of sense. So it's a good idea. It's also a good rapport building technique when you're repeating or you're mirroring what they said. So I think that pretty much are, the high level. You guys probably glossed through these already. It's a good idea to check in with them somewhere around the middle point. So if it's an hour, maybe around half an hour, say, hey, how are you feeling? Uh, Simple question like, how are you feeling? What's coming up for you? How's it going? Just to get a feel for where we are. Sometimes that's a good technique also. The objectives that are stated in the beginning, sometimes through questioning, it might take a different direction. So it may be a good opportunity also to say, hey, when we had started talking, you said your objective is, for example, I'm just making this up for Krishna. Krishna, you wanted to be more available to your international clientele, but because of time differences, you've been challenged with that, and now you're trying to adjust your few other things to be more available, for example. That's what you started with. But halfway through, it kind of diverted into a side topic. So that's a good opportunity also to bring back saying, hey, just when we started, this is the goal we had started with, but now looks like for some reason you're very focused on Germany. Again, I'm making this up. Um, are you particularly worried about Germany, or is it still across the globe that we have started with? And if Krishna says, no, 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 just Germany, because that's where I want to focus the next 2 years, then you guide the conversation toward Germany. Otherwise, you bring it back to the main fact. Again, the whole idea is that you are paying attention and you are, you know, putting traction in the right direction so that you can achieve the goals that your coachee or your client has set or stated in the beginning. Okay, so these are some best practices. Let's now talk about some traps to avoid. So these are some things that you definitely want to avoid. Like, don't overpower the conversation. Um, don't do checklist coaching. What is checklist coaching? So many coaches, they Google somewhere and they have, like, 10 standard questions that they ask every coachee. And that's not a good way to go, because you're not peeling the onion. You're not digging into your client's inner self or potential. You're just using generic questions, and it's not. Although you may finish the time and you may get paid, but you may not have helped the client meet his or her objective. So don't do that. We already talked about distractions. I'm not going to go into detail. um, if your client is going for a very long time, right? Um, don't do um, anything that kind of disturbs them. Um, just by your presence, saying and find the right opportunity if it is totally getting derailed, and just be taking notes, especially if if it's the monologue which is going for a long time. And there are creative ways of doing that, but don't like interrupt, especially if they are in a particular chain of thought. So one thing that I've seen a lot of new coaches do is they stack questions, which basically, what it means is that they'll ask like 3 questions at the same time. And that's difficult for the coachee or the client to respond to. So try to formulate your question in your mind and keep the questions short and simple, and fewer smaller questions at a time is better than, one huge question, because then they're going to answer in a long way, right? And then also, I've seen a lot of new coaches, what they do is they feel that they're getting paid for that session, and therefore it is their job to solve the problem. So they start solving the problem for the coachee, or the client, and that's not your job to do. Your job is to help the coachee or the client to find their own resources to solve the problem, to reach their potential. It's not your job to solve the problem. You don't get to do that. They get to do that. You help them to achieve that. And therefore, the last bullet, it says lead the coachee to a decision or response. A common one that I can think of is something about having an accountability partner, right? Which typically comes towards the end. And I have seen some coaches, sometimes they would say that, can your wife be your accountability partner? And you don't want to do that, right? You could ask a question saying that, how are you going to make sure that you are going to be accountable for what objectives you've set? that's kind of question they will answer by saying, yeah, I'm going to do X, or I'm going to talk to person Y to do that. The other thing which I've done is, which I've seen being done, is a lot of times coaches would say, I'm happy to be your accountability partner. Again, that's not your job to do. You're there to shine the light and help them to solve their problem. And by becoming an accountability partner, which first of all is not part of your contract, second is not part of the scope, thirdly, you're kind of inserting yourself in a territory where you don't want, right? They have to find their accountability partner. Again, that's just an example. And there are so many traps there where it's so natural for us to say something or tell them what to do. And sometimes, by asking questions, sometimes the coachee doesn't get it, and it can be frustrating. But you have to, keep doing what is expected of a coach, which is asking questions and not telling them what to do. And trust me, it is very difficult. So it will only come with practice. So please practice. Some of the as a bonus for joining today, I'm going to be giving everybody 80 questions. Look through them and see if those questions resonate with you. Add your own questions to that. As you practice, you'll get better. With that, let's jump to how to start a session right. So we talked about best practices. We talked about traps that you should avoid. One thing I also do want to mention, that when you're practicing, it's a good idea to record the video, and then especially if you're practicing with others. So watch the video together or by yourself and see, what are some of the mistakes you did? What are some areas where you can get better? Um, did you actually kind of guide them unknowingly by asking some questions? Did you spend too much time in a certain zone? Or did you ask questions that you shouldn't have, or could you have asked that question in a better way? So a lot of those things will come if you go back and watch those videos. So please do that. Definitely help me a lot by watching those videos. If you go to the ACC course that Ellen Leadership Right teaches, part of that is going to be, you're going to be set in triads of 3 people, where one person is the coach, another person is the coachee, and the third person is a mentor. And after each session, you'll get feedback. So that's a good practice to do as well. If you can find, if you're 3 people, that's the best way to do it. With that, so let's say now, I've prepared, I've read through the contract in advance, and today is Monday. I'm about to meet with Krishna for our coaching session. So how am I going to do that? So on the right hand side, if you see, there is a box. So this is how when I started coaching, I would kind of um, ration my time in a manner that, based on knowing myself, I can go into very long sentences, or I can go really deep and lose track of time. And for me to make sure that I am keeping time, I'm still meeting the objectives of the session, I kind of put those guardrails for myself. And they don't have to be hard and fast, but they helped me a lot when I was practicing, when I first started my journey as a coach. Um, Now I don't need it as much, but it's still a good reminder for me how to do that. And again, like, for example, I'll just continue with the story with Krishna. Krishna may have bought a contract for me for just one session, or he may have bought, a package of, let's say, 5 sessions, for example, right? So if there are 5 sessions, then I have a little more time to dig deeper and not really go into the area of him coming up with solutions. So I may time it slightly different, but but it's a good idea still to be in good control of the time. A lot of times I've seen where coaching conversations happen, and really the objectives were not met, and then the coach says, maybe we should book another session. The coachee may think that, okay, this session cost me X amount of money, So for example, I'm just going to make it up. Let's say it costs $100, and now the coachee feels that, okay, the coach purposely kind of prolonged it so that he gets another session out of it, and you don't want to be in that situation. So just you be mindful of the time, and we're going to talk a little more about it. So keep a little bit of time for your opening. This is just a sample for half an hour, and you can multiply it based on whatever your needs are. um, for example, if we were doing a goal model, I would, for setting up the goals, I would put around 5 minutes for that conversation, talk about the current reality, another 5 minutes, what are the options that they have, 5 minutes, what is the way forward, 5 minutes, about 3 minutes for closing, and then I have a buffer of 5 minutes. That's about for half an hour, but you can change it the way you want. So, okay, so now that I'm ready, so I will make sure my appearance is good, there's no disturbances, my dog is not coming, my mom is not coming, I am in that room, and now the session starts. I will start with a very big smile and big presence and warmth, and greet and thank the coachee for attending, and then maybe have some conversation about creating psychological safety. uh, it's important to go through the contract at this point, as I mentioned a couple of slides back. um, it's important to talk about how much time you have for that session. Go over very high level, that uh, you will be taking notes. Nothing will be shared out of this particular conversation with anybody. You're not video recording it. um, Definitely identify, what is the purpose and outcome that the coachee is looking for. That is the most important thing. And then agree on the process for the conversation. So remind that you will, as a coach, in the capacity of a coach, will really be just asking questions and not giving them advice, just to remind them. So that's pretty much it. So once I've done this part, um, I'm ready to jump into the main coaching conversation with Krishna. Krishna, I'll take a pause to see if there have been any questions that you want to tackle on these areas before I go into the next slide.
Right. There's an opportunity for people to ask questions. If you have anything, I would love to hear them. There was a Maru was talking about being present. Maru, personally, being a life coach, I cannot agree more with you. And this is something which I practice personally. And I know even coaches like Toby and me, we have our own techniques where before we start the coaching session, we take at least 10-15 minutes to be present for that. It can be breathing, making sure that all the things which will disturb you in your coaching session, you are checked out. You checked out personally. It can be, Toby gave a good example. It can be a dog, it can be a mom, it can be using the loo, because even if you're concentrating, I need to break, I need to pee, that will distract, that
Yeah,
will
yeah.
distract you. So do a proper checkout with yourself. Be present. The beautiful thing about coaching is it emphasizes the importance of being a human being. Being means present, present. So, Maru, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. Using a grow, you had booked, say, 4 sessions. You aim to go through all the stages in one, or just baseline it. Okay, Andrew, I wish I can explain to you about this one, this question, what you asked. That would take me at least a couple of hours or even a day to go through all the way we work through the coaching conversation. My colleague Toby has said, for you to be a good coach, one of the tips he said was you need to be a good listener. You need to be a good listener. And at the same time, being empathetic about the person, where they are coming from. Yes, there are few things you have to take into consideration. It's just not like, yay, just keep on doing what you think is right according to you. It's not about you in the coaching conversation. It's about the person. Toby, you have anything to add, my friend?
Now, so I think you covered it, and the next, so we're going to do a deep dive on grow. Maybe I will, I'll remember to address that question at that time. Cool. All right. Anything else other than Maru's drinking that we want to cover?
Sorry, but you're not making fun. That was a good comment, valid point. Sorry.
All right, so we'll move forward in the interest of time. It's 12:40, and we have few more things to cover. All right, so I'm not going to cover this in a whole lot of detail. This is not something I created. I just found the only place where so many different models was in one place, and I shamelessly copy pasted it. But I also did the right thing of putting the link out down there. So today we're going to be talking mainly about Grow model. I personally like Grow model. It's a good one. It's an easy one. It is also one of the most popular models out there, the most widely used. It gives you the flexibility to kind of use it according to your likes. So we're just going to focus on that. But this is again is there for you. You can take a look. Some of them are very similar. Some people just came up with other acronyms, either to become famous or make money. I don't know. But some of them are very similar, just different words. So my recommendation is if you're starting in coaching, stick to Grow. I think you will grow to like it. No puns intended. With that, let's jump to Grow model. So what is the Grow model? Grow stands for goal. What is the goal of the coachee? It's not your goal. It is the coachee's goal. What is the client trying to achieve? You'll be going to be focused on that, but it's important to understand what that person's goal is. And this is the first step of the conversation, and this is not easy. A lot of times people don't know what they want, and you as a coach have to ask the right questions to kind of peel the onion to get to the center of it, to really understand what are they looking for. So there are two aspects to it. One is their overall goal, and second is what is their objective for that particular session. So to answer the earlier question, let's say the client has booked 4 sessions with you. In your discovery or in your early conversations, I think it's important to find out. And as you're not doing coaching during that conversation, you're just talking as a coach, and the coachee, you're having an actual conversation. This is not a coaching conversation, right? The discovery. So you're welcome to share ideas, thoughts, recommendations. But when you're doing the session, that's when you are in the coaching stance. That's when you're a coach. The other person is a coachee. So during that time, maybe it's important to understand what is it they're looking for in your experience. How long does it take? So if you think it's a very complex problem they're trying to resolve, then maybe the first session just goes into just understanding the goal. There's nothing wrong with that. So you're not following the Grow model during the first in that particular session. You're really focused on trying to understand what is it that the person is looking for, right? And these models are there to support you, to help you. They're frameworks. They are not there to bind you. They're just there to guide you. So don't get too hung up on the model. Be hung up on what is their objective and how are you trying to help them achieve that. That's all your focus should be. So that's G for you, which is goal. Uh, so right. So what is the client looking for? The next is reality, right? So where is the person in relationship to that goal? So in the example I gave you, where Krishna is extremely busy leading leadership tribe and wants to increase his market presence in Europe, and is not able to make the time for the different parts of Europe where he wants to grow, and that's the problem he's trying to solve. So in the G, you will try to go deeper into understanding what exactly is Krishna looking for. And during the conversation, Krishna will come up with what is his objectives. Like, if you can't grow in all of Europe, maybe he's going to say, in 2021, if I could conquer uh, you know Romania and Malta, that's a good enough goal for him. So he's now come down to 1 or 2 countries or whatever it is. Then the reality is where you're going to ask questions to Krishna to understand, what has he done so far? What are his options? What has he done so far? And what does it look like? What does the market look like? Where is he with that problem? Where is the relationship? And once you identify that, you're going to jump into the options part, right? Saying that, okay, now that I understand you want to grow in Romania and Macedonia, what are some of the things have you thought about so far? What are some of the options that appear, likely to you? And so Krishna is going to share some of the options that he may have thought about, some of the things that the competitors are doing, some of the things that he actually put thought to, but really hasn't, you know, uh, the rubber hasn't met the road yet. It's just thoughts in his head. So your goal now is to make sure that you're talking through those to make sure those options are real, they're actionable, and a bunch of questions to understand what happens if he does X, what happens if he does Y, what happens if it doesn't do X, what happens if it doesn't do Y. So those options now become solid for Krishna, and Krishna now, is ready to move forward. And this is where you will go into the W, which is, uh, okay, Krishna, you had three choices. I'm just making this part up. Krishna, you have three or four choices. Um, I heard you say X, blah, blah, blah. And then Krishna says, you know what? The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do Romania first. Whatever lessons learned I get from Romania, I'm going to apply that in Macedonia. Since I already have somebody in Romania, that would be an easier start for me. And so that's the solution that Krishna came up with. He is going to expand in Romania first, and basically this is where the will, right? So these options are now solidified, they're created into an action plan, and you as the coach will ask a bunch of questions now to make sure, okay, looks like you have a good solid plan going forward. What are some of the things that could go wrong? um, what happens, how are you going to celebrate? Sometimes you ask that question. If you actually succeed, how are you going to celebrate? And that kind of transports Krishna into a zone where he thinks that he has conquered Romania, right? He has an actual leadership tribe office set up there, and he started getting revenue from there. He's getting happy messages from his trainees there, and he kind of feels jubilant in that. That motivates him to do even more. So those are some of the things that you need to do during the W, and then basically you conclude the session in a positive note. Wish the coachee best of luck, and if, for example, you have multiple sessions, you could talk about that if you wish to in the closing. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is the grow model for you. So hopefully that helps, and hopefully the storytelling works. And Krishna, hopefully you will conquer Europe. With that, here are 80 powerful questions that I have collected from various different sources, some from the internet, some from when I was doing my practice sessions with other coaches. I am in my journey, final stages of my journey to finish my ACC, which is Associate Certified Coach from ICF. I plan to achieve that by summer this year, so I'm keeping it slightly open. But by end of summer, I should have achieved that. So I did a lot of coaching sessions with a lot of people. I offered free coaching on LinkedIn for many months, and I spoke to different people. Some of the questions that you'll see here are questions that I came up with based on those conversations. So I'm sharing this treasure trove of 80 questions with you. So here's, for example, for goal, these are 20 questions that you could ask during the goal part of the conversation. Here are 20 that you could ask around the reality part. Now, some of these may not resonate with you 100% because your style may be different, but it's a good start for you, saying like, and some of these questions could be kind of repetitive or asking it in a different way. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with asking the same question twice to the coachee. There's nothing wrong with that. I've seen some advanced level coaches say that in the beginning, say, I may repeat a question because I want to hear you say that once more or go deeper. So, you'll really understand a lot of these things as you start doing it. Here are your obstacles or options related questions. And finally, this is your way forward. So there are 20 for each one of them. I had way more, but I kind of brought them down to 20 each, which is should be an amazing start for you. I wish I had this when I was starting my journey. So this is my gift to you, my friends, for joining today. Uh, Here are some video resources where you could go learn more about Grow model. There is also an ARC model, which is taught in ACC. Um, there's a psychology of agile coaching. So there's a lot of good stuff here. So please take a look at that.
During coaching session, should coach follow structured discussions or should we be more involved in a variety of coachee questions? Over to you, sir. Enough.
Thank you, Krishna. So as I said multiple times, you are focused on the person. You are obviously paying attention to the problem, but you are focused on the person. So whatever the objective was set in the beginning of that conversation, that is most important. Now, having been trained in NLP, we know how the human brain works. If we don't put some sort of a structure around it, it is so easy to just spend the whole time in one problem zone and not really moving forward from that. So it's important to have some structure that guides you. And once you know your coachee or your client during the discovery, a lot of times I've seen good coaches actually say no to certain people because they get to understand what the person is trying to achieve out of it. If, for example, just making this example, and I'm not being judgmental, I had a case where the the person, and I'll just keep it very light. It took 15 years to develop this person bad habits of doing things a certain way. And the person said, I am only willing to do 2 sessions and I want you to solve my problem. And I understood that that problem cannot be solved in 2 sessions. So I, very professionally basically said, well, that's great, but I don't think, I basically did not take that person as my client. So you have the choice. You don't have to take every client out there. But if you do take that particular client or coachee, then having some sort of structure helps you. I hope that answers your question.
Toby, thank you. Valid, very valid point. When you're starting, it's like learning how to ride a bicycle. When you are first time on your bicycle, you'll be like, I need to balance, I need to hold my handlebar, I need to make sure. It's like
Mhm.
first time when you're doing it, it's all about the structure. But when you go through the experience, I don't know if you have done this. I've done this. When I went down the hill, my hands were all up and I was going down the hill. It was what happened next. That was a different memory to have. But it comes with few memories.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
comes with few memories. So,
yeah. In fact, since you gave the bicycle example, uh, so I'll change it slightly. When I started learning how to ride a motorcycle, one of the first things they said is, don't look at your motorcycle, look at the road. Look at the road and your motorcycle will take you there. The moment you look at the road, you're going to fall down, right? So you have to, whatever you've learned, you have to apply it, get better at it. So don't look at down on the road, look at the road ahead of you. So in the same way, if you have a structure, you know the client doesn't know you are taking them to the grow model. They don't care whether you're using grow model or cigar model or whatever model. All they know is that they're there and they need help, and they've told you the objective. Whether you can get them to a point where there's at least one or two actionable things that they can work on, that's success. All right, what
brilliant.
else do we have questions?
So most of the time, people want mentoring and come for coaching. How to handle this? Okay, Toby, let me try this one. When a person comes for coaching or mentoring, it's not like a coach or a mentor say, hey, let me coach you, no, let me mentor you. No, it doesn't work like that. If I want to have a coach, I understand what is the intent behind it and what do I need from my coaching conversation. So I would find a coach who would help me. So Toby is a subject matter expert when it comes to bringing change transformation. He's an SME. So if I, as a person, if I want to learn about change and bringing transform, I already know some knowledge, but I have a problem with my existing client. So I would reach out to Toby and I say, Toby, man, I have this problem. I don't know what to do. So as a mentee, I know who is my subject matter expert is. I know what I need to do, and I reach out to the person. So the mentee or the coachee always finds the people they need help with. So most of the people want mentoring and they come for coaching how to handle this.
Yeah.
So if
So
it's
one quick thing on that. I know we're running out of time. This morning I posted something on LinkedIn. It's a small short article on coaching versus mentoring. So I invite you to go take a look at that, and then if you have any questions, reach out to me. I requested Chitra to type my LinkedIn profile there. So
so
please go look at that article I posted today. I think that's going to give you a lot of insight.
all right, I wish I can answer all your questions, but afraid we don't have. You can drop us a note at hello@leadership tribe. We'll be there for you. Even if it's for you or for your team or for your organization, just reach out to us and we'll be there for you. Have a lovely weekend and speak to you soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Come on, man, Toby. It's lovely to have you all the time. Cheers, dude.
Thank you. Bye.